Okay, let's unpack this. We're about to jump into a deep dive based on source material you provided, all about um, a really crucial piece of the nonprofit puzzle.
Yeah, what absolutely must be in place strategically.
Exactly, before you even think about asking for funding.
That's right. And look, this isn't about, the fancy grant writing tips or donor stuff. Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is about the bedrock, the foundation. And we're seeing it through the eyes of someone who's really, really been there.
Yeah, decades of experience.
Extensive hands-on experience.
And the expert whose perspective we're exploring is, well, she sounds incredibly insightful. The source mentions she's a grant strategist, fundraiser, program builder.
And also a Black woman bringing over 35 years in the nonprofit field.
Wow, 35 years.
Yeah,
That's a lot of learning, seeing what works and what definitely doesn't.
absolutely. And she really zeroes in on this core problem she's seen again and again,
Which is,
particularly impacting, smaller grassroots groups,
meh.
BIPOC-led organizations often.
But
These groups, they start with just immense passion, right? A powerful vision for change.
yeah, you see that all the time.
But then they hit this wall, a significant wall when it comes to actually getting the funding.
Right, the money to keep it going and ideally grow the work.
Sustain and grow.
So they've got the drive, they've got the community connection, but that funding piece, it trips them up. And according to her, why is that so common?
Well, she points out something interesting. Unlike a lot of fields, there's no, formal degree for this specific kind of work.
Uh-huh. Yay.
Building and funding community-rooted stuff.
Yeah.
There's no single manual that fits everyone.
So you really learn by doing it.
Exactly, by being in the trenches, as they say.
And she's certainly been in those trenches. The source shared the scale of her experience, written and won over $30 million in grants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge.
And helping organizations go from basically just an idea to...
To fully functioning missions with staff, with structure, with, actual stability.
And she's really clear that her experience isn't just the highlight reel, right?
Oh, definitely not. She explicitly mentions seeing the wins and the wounds, the missed deadlines and the million-dollar awards.
That kind of balanced perspective is so valuable. She understands the pitfalls just as much as the pathways.
Exactly. She gets why things go wrong.
So it sounds like she's really pinpointed the core reasons why these amazing visions, even with all that passion, sometimes falter or even collapse when fundraising time comes.
Precisely. She highlights these critical foundational things that she finds are just consistently missing when organizations aren't, ready for those funding asks.
Okay, like what are these non-negotiables that are often just accents?
She names a few key ones right up front. Number one, a lack of strategy.
No strategy. Okay.
No truly engaged board.
Engage board. Got it.
No clear budget. That's a big one. And not enough data. Or maybe no data at all.
Okay, so no strategy, no engaged board, no clear budget, no data. Wow. And she has a really vivid way of describing the consequence of lacking those, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah. The source quotes are saying funders can smell that chaos from a mile away.
Oof, that phrase, it really sticks with you.
It does, right? Because it gets right to the heart of it. Fundraising isn't just about how good your program idea is.
It's more than that.
It's about showing you have the organizational muscle, the structure to actually manage an investment properly.
Funders are looking for stability, clarity. They want to know their money's safe and will be used effectively.
Exactly. They can smell that chaos.
So the core purpose then, from her perspective in the source, it's about bridging that gap, right? She wants to teach, in plain English, how to actually build that essential internal stuff.
The strategy, the systems.
Before you even start chasing the dollars, it's about getting your house in order, step by step.
Yes, and she really stresses doing it without skipping steps. She sees these things not as annoying hurdles, but as the actual building blocks you need for success down the road, for the long haul.
Okay, let's dig into those a bit more then, those foundational elements. She talks about needing a strategy. What does she mean by that, specifically in this context, before fundraising?
Yeah, it's definitely more than just, having a nice mission statement on the wall.
Okay.
Strategy here means having a really clear, ideally written down plan for how you actually operate.
How you do the work.
Who you serve, what specific outcomes you're aiming for, and crucially, how you plan to get the resources, including the funding, to make it all happen.
So it's the roadmap. Funders want to see you have a map, not just like Good intentions and a vague direction.
Exactly. A roadmap that shows you know where you're going and how you plan to fuel the journey, resource-wise.
Right. Okay. She also mentioned needing an engaged board. Why is that so critical before you ask for money? What does engaged really look like?
On engaged board, it signals strong governance, good oversight.
Mm.
Funders, they look at the board as like the ultimate guardians of the organization's resources and mission.
The fiduciaries.
Right. So if the board isn't really active, if they aren't knowledgeable about the programs, if they aren't ideally contributing resources or connections themselves,
Mm-hmm.
it just raises red flags, questions about leadership stability, the capacity to handle funds responsibly.
So it's proof the adults are in the room paying attention, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. It shows accountability at the highest level.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just a name-only board. It's a sign of real leadership strength. Okay, next up. A clear budget. What makes a budget clear in this pre-fundraising stage?
Clear means realistic, first of all.
Okay.
Detailed, itemized. It needs to reflect the actual costs of doing your work, running your programs, covering operations.
Not just ballpark figures.
No, definitely not. It should clearly show where the money is needed and exactly how it's going to be used to get those results you talked about in your strategy.
Right.
Funders need to see you really understand the financial reality of your work, that you've got a credible plan for managing money.
And if the budget is vague or non-existent,
That just screams chaos again, right? It shows a lack of basic financial planning.
got it. A clear budget proves you've actually done the math. You know what it really takes. Okay, the fourth one she mentioned early on was data. What kind of data are we talking about here? And why is it essential before you apply?
Okay, data is basically your proof.
Proof of what?
Proof of impact and proof of need. It's the information that shows why your work is necessary in the first place
Mm-hmm.
and that it's actually making a difference.
So what does that look like practically? Numbers, stories.
It can be different things, like demographic data about the community you serve, statistics showing the scale of the problem you're tackling,
Okay.
or really importantly, evaluation data, showing the outcomes for the people in your programs. What changed for them?
Ah, so the results.
Yes. Funders fundamentally invest in impact. Data is how you demonstrate that impact credibly.
So without it, your claims are just anecdotal.
Exactly, just stories, which are important, but data gives you the hard evidence.
Evidence is definitely powerful. Okay, so those are the first four big ones: strategy, board, budget, data. But she also mentioned other key pieces, right? Like having your story clear.
Yes, absolutely. The story, having strong systems, and building genuine community partnerships.
Let's touch on the story. How does having that clear narrative fit into being ready for fundraising?
Well, your story.
Yeah.
That's how you connect the heart of your mission to the minds and wallets of potential funders.
Right, the emotional connection.
Totally. It's not just listing activities like we run workshops. It's about clearly articulating the problem you solve, the people you serve, and the impact you create.
And doing it compellingly.
Yes, in a compelling, authentic voice. And that story needs to be consistent, across your website, how you talk about the work, your eventual proposals.
It's the human element that makes people actually care and want to get involved, want to invest.
Exactly. It makes the data and the budget come alive.
Okay. Then you also mentioned systems. What kind of systems is she emphasizing here? That sounds maybe a bit less glamorous than story.
Maybe. But it's the operational backbone, right?
Okay.
This includes things like, how do you track your donors and contacts? How do you manage information about the people in your programs?
Mm-hmm.
How do you actually measure and track that data we just talked about? How do you handle the finances beyond just having the budget, like bookkeeping, reporting?
The nuts and bolts.
Yeah, the internal machinery. Strong systems show funders that you're well managed, you're accountable, and you actually have the operational capacity to handle their money effectively and report back on how it was used.
It's the infrastructure that makes the work possible and transparent.
Couldn't have said it better.
Mhm.
Infrastructure is a good word for it.
Got it. And the last one you mentioned was community partnerships. Why are those so critical before asking for money?
Well, authentic community partnerships, they demonstrate that your work isn't happening in some kind of vacuum, right?
Mm.
It shows you're connected to and supported by the actual community you're trying to serve.
Funders like to see that.
Oh, definitely. They often look for evidence that an organization isn't working in isolation, that it's collaborating, avoiding duplication, that it's really embedded in the community's ecosystem.
And I guess those partnerships can bring other benefits too.
For sure. They can be sources of referrals, volunteers, sometimes even local matching funds or in-kind support. It all demonstrates viability and community buy-in.
It shows your roots are deep in the community.
Exactly. Deep roots.
Okay.
Yeah.
So bringing this all together, this expert's perspective from the source material we have is that success in fundraising isn't some like secret handshake or a quick trick you learn.
Not at all.
It's really the result of doing the hard yards, right? The diligent, sometimes unseen work of building a really strong internal foundation.
That's it. Strategy, engaged board, clear budget, data, compelling story, reliable systems, and those genuine community partnerships.
It's about building something solid, something sustainable.
Precisely. Built to last.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the strategy needed before the ask, let's just recap the core mission this expert puts forward in the source. What's she trying to achieve?
Her mission seems really direct, very clear. She wants to guide listeners, guide you, through exactly what needs to be firmly in place.
All those foundational elements.
Yes, those critical pieces. Before you even think about making that formal funding request, get ready first.
And she promises to do this in a particular way, too. The source mentioned her style is slow, smart, and honest.
Yeah, which sounds refreshing, actually.
It does, focused on providing wisdom, clarity, and explicitly zero fluff.
Which honestly is probably incredibly valuable in a field that can sometimes be filled with, confusing advice or unrealistic promises.
Totally. And she's very clear about what not to expect from her approach.
Right. No gimmicks.
No get a grant quick nonsense.
No selling you dreams that aren't, grounded in the actual work needed.
Because, as she emphasizes, the ultimate goal isn't just about getting one grant, is it?
No, it's much bigger than that. It's teaching you how to build something that can actually last.
Sustainability. Impact over the long term.
Exactly.
So if you listening are an organizer, maybe a founder, a leader, and you feel like you've got the passion, you've got the vision, but you're just tired of grant applications not panning out.
Hitting that wall we talked about.
Yeah. If you're ready to move past just, winging it and really get strategic.
And if you want to build something strong, something robust that genuinely honors your community, your calling,
then this expert's perspective, forged over 35 years, feels directly relevant to your journey. It really hits home.
it really is like a roadmap, isn't it, for building organizations that are ready and resilient.
Definitely. And thinking about her really strong emphasis on building that internal foundation before anything else, all the specific elements she listed.
Strategy, board, budget, data, story, systems, partnerships.
Yeah, all of those. It kind of raises a final thought for you, the listener, to consider right now. Based on where you are currently, which one of those specific foundational elements feels like the most crucial first step you need to focus on tackling today?
That's a good question.
Which one needs your attention first to get truly ready for that future funding ask? Something to think about.